Hi there, Happy New Year, Malcolm here with my 159th Booktube video, and today I'll be bringing you my December wrap-up and January TBR. As usual, there's plenty of things to get through, so let's get cracking. Kicking off with a numbers game, so I managed 8 books in December, totalling 1,715 pages. How is that against the previous year? Well, I'm down by 3,948 pages. Oh well, but I did read exactly 100 books, which is my lowest for a fair while actually. Hope to do better this year. To kick off, I read Firefly, Serenity, The Shepherd's Tale. I believe this is book 3 of the series, in which we find out books past to some extent. Because the show was cut short, we never really got to find out much about who Shepherd Book was. I'm so cold I can see my breath. Yeah. And this one starts with the event in the film Serenity. Spoilers for if you haven't seen that. And a few years earlier. So it's a story that tells itself backwards as we find out about Book's backstory. The artwork was alright, nothing particularly special. I could tell who's who. But the story, I just felt, having not known the truth behind Book for so long, when it was finally revealed, I was a bit underwhelmed by it, to be honest. It was worth reading though. And then after that, I finished reading Ready Player One by Ernest Cline to my wife. This was a reread for me. She'd only seen the film. For those who don't know, the world's pretty much fallen apart, life sucks, and the only escape is an online, massive multiplayer game called The Oasis, in which you go to work, you get schooled, you fall in love, and you play games as well. And the creator of that died, and he leaves in the Oasis an Easter egg, meaning that whoever finds it gets to own the whole thing. And it's a race against the clock as we follow one of these egg hunters, or gunters, as he finally, after about 4 years, finally solves the first clue, and he is up against a massive conglomeration who are hell-bent on winning this using any means so that they can slap all sorts of financial restrictions on it, advertising and all that sort of stuff. So it's very much an anti-corporate book, but also a very 80s nostalgia book, as the guy who died, he's really into 80s stuff, and a lot of the clues and things that the people have to do to get these Easter eggs are all steeped in 80s memorabilia and pop culture. I quite enjoyed the film, it's quite fun for what it is, but it's really interesting rereading this, just seeing how completely unlike the book the film is, really. The basic premise is the same, but to be honest, the book is so much better and has so much more meaning and depth behind it. So if you've seen the film and weren't impressed and thought there was no point reading the book, read the book. It is nothing like the film and actually good. Booktastic. My wife agrees with that. And after that I then read Star Wars Spectre of the Past by Timothy Zahn. This is book 1 of the Hand of Thrawn duology. It's now set about 15 years after the events of the original film. And one of the big bads from the main Star Wars trilogy that followed the original films, the Thrawn trilogy, also by Timothy Zahn, is back. Also it seems. Actually, he's an imposter, and that's not a spoiler, it's revealed really quickly. But of course, most of the rest of the galaxy don't know he's an imposter. But more than that, the remnants of the Empire, and there's not many of them left now, have found a weak point in the New Republic, and the New Republic is on the verge of destroying itself. It's quite a busy book. There's lots of POVs as we jump from Luke and his adventures, tracking down pirates who apparently work for the Empire, to the Imperial conspiracy with this apparent Thrawn character. Leia and Han are on their own adventures, Landel's on his own adventure, Wedge is on his own adventure, and we also follow some of the Imperial teams as well as they're doing their sabotaging and general mayhem, as well as the introduction of some new characters as well. So there's an awful lot going on in here. But at no point did it feel like it got bogged down with too many characters. We jumped quite seamlessly from one scene to the next, quite often within the same chapter. So we did bounce around quite a lot. Although I would say sometimes we did leave a character for a certain length of time, and so by the time we got back to them, it was like, oh yes, that's going on. But really enjoyed it. If you like the Thrawn trilogy, I would highly recommend this one. Booktastic. I think the only thing I would say though is because this was written pretty soon after the Thrawn trilogy, which was set 10 years before this book, quite a lot of stuff has been written filling the gap between those 10 years. Now Timothy Zahn did have some idea of some of the events that were going to take place that were planned to be written by other authors, but most of the characters having callbacks to events in the Thrawn trilogy, as if nothing had happened in between then and now, because obviously it hadn't been written yet. So you can understand why it's there, but it's just a bit weird that they don't reference the things that just happened in the previous book in the series chronologically, because it hadn't been written at the time. Anyway, good stuff. After that I then read Firefly, Serenity, Those Left Behind. This is book 1, although in theory although technically it makes absolutely no difference which order you read these at all, because The Shepherd's Tale was a standalone, and this one is a standalone, albeit perhaps a direct prequel to the film Serenity. There's a surprise return character from the series, really a surprise character. I mean, it's like, I thought they were dead, sort of surprise return character, and they want revenge on the events that happened in the series, and so tries tracking down Mal with the help of two of the agents with their hands in blue. You find out a bit more about them a bit, but obviously because, you know, the film takes place, there's no real concern for heroes. But I really enjoyed it. I think the artwork's alright. I think it's better than in the other in the other book. Buy it. Definitely one for the fans of the show. And after that I then read Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Origin. Now, jumping from one Whedon-verse story to another. And this one is basically the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer film in graphic novel form, but told by the Sarah Michelle Gellar Buffy, rather than the Kirsty Swanson Buffy who was in the film. Also, the Watcher doesn't look anything like Donald Sutherland. But I'm told that the events in here are pretty much what is in the film. However, right at the conclusion of the story, we jump to the library at Sunnydale School, where Buffy is telling Xander and Willow just how it came to be that she ended up burning down the school gym. And so one could argue that we're seeing it from their point of view and how she's telling it. And obviously they're seeing their Buffy as the main character in that story. I'm told the film isn't that great. The book is, it's okay. Although the vampires in the artwork look like great big green bats, which is a bit weird. Worth reading, I suppose. Arguably better than watching the film, so I'm told. And after that I then read The Everlasting by Tim Lebbon. This is my book of the month for December. How to describe this one? Middle-aged man starts seeing dead people. The story goes from there, really. And it's a bit of a hard one to explain without actually giving away the plot. I thought it was going to be a haunted story. I mean, it sort of vaguely is, but not in that way. Basically, this man's grandfather, before he committed suicide, had discovered the secret to immortality and wrote his grandson a note, which took about 30 years to reach him. And when he reads the note, he is suddenly able to see ghosts. His wife is then kidnapped by his grandfather's dead best friend, and an immortal woman turns up to take him on an adventure to go and rescue her. Here's a vague synopsis of what happens. Really enjoyed it. I found it captivating. I wouldn't say it's necessarily Tim Lebbon's best story, but I enjoyed the flow of it, and the mystery was enough to keep me captivated throughout. Yeah, it was right. Also, it's worth buying if you're a Tim Lebbon fan. And after that I then read Astro City, Life in the Big City. I spotted this in the library, thought I'd give it a go. And this is one of those deconstructions of the superhero genre, while at the same time being a superhero story. Or rather, a series of short stories. So there's a completely different metropolis type setting, and they have superheroes. They're established, they've been here for ages, they do their thing. And many of them are sort of vaguely recognisable as a non-trade marketable version of other well-known superheroes from the DC and Marvel universes. Except they're called something different and they're totally different characters, obviously. First story, for example, we follow a Superman-type character who is not Superman. I can't remember his name at all, but he's definitely not Superman. He's actually from the future, not from another planet, so totally different. And rather than being a standard Superman adventure, we follow him on an average day of the life of this character, and all he wants to do is fly. He loves to fly. He dreams of flying. However, because he's so fast, and because everyone needs saving and helping all the time, he literally measures how much time he gets to fly during his day. And it's like 3.5 seconds to get to here to save this person from a burning building, 2.7 seconds to get to here to stop these hostage takers, etc, etc. And so he spends more time saving people and doing things than actually getting to do the thing he loves to do, which is fly. That's all he wants to do. And I thought that was a really nice twist on that type of character. So it's a series of short stories following different aspects of superherodom, not just following the heroes. Sometimes it's following average Joe as they are rescued and dealing with the fallout, or somebody stumbles across the secret identity of one of them and Pandora's box that opens up. Really clever series of stories, and I'm delighted to see there are more books in the series, so I'd love to get my hands on them if I could. Booktastic. And then finally, I also picked up Ghost Rider Unchained. I don't know much about Ghost Rider really. I've seen the Nicolas Cage film, quite enjoyed it for what it was. I know people hated it, but I thought it was fun for what it was. And the one from Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So I'm not a complete stranger to it, but I've never read any Ghost Rider stuff before, so I thought I'd give this a go. Looked like it was an origin type thing to start off with, because it said book 1, but turned out not to be. But that's fine. My trouble with most of these superhero stories are that they are so involved and they have characters that I just no idea what's going on. And there are not many new entry-level superhero stories, as far as I'm aware. Anyway, this story did what it did. It was weird, wonderful, gross. But to me, this pointless, I think. It didn't really go anywhere or do anything. I did enjoy the first bit when he was realising that the life he was in was a trap, and that was a good little twist there. I enjoyed that one with the with reality spilling through every now and again, but because reality was so warped and disturbing that he was refusing to accept it. But in the end, it wasn't really for me, so worth reading. Other people liked it, but it wasn't for me. Anyway, those are the books I read. On to the books I am planning to read for January. So first up is Star Wars Vision of the Future. This is book 2 of the Hand of Thrawn duology by Timothy Zahn. Yeah, and at nearly 700 pages, there's obviously quite a lot stuffed into that. So when I finish that, I'll then move on to January's book of the month, The Stringers by... who the hell's this boy? Chris Panatier. We took our boys to Waterstone to spend some of their Christmas money, and I just happened to read the blurb on the back, and in fact it involved a jar of pickles and a man who's an expert on the mating habits of Brazilian tree lice. I had to pick it up, and so I'm going to read a book I bought in the month I bought it in. Hey! The story basically follows Ben, who knows stuff, the mating habits of various insects particularly, and clocks, and a thing called the churn. He doesn't know why he knows these things, but clearly his knowledge is dangerous because he is soon kidnapped by an alien bounty hunter, along with his best mate and a jar of pickles. So space adventure and humour. You can see I'm currently reading this one, absolutely loving it, really funny. And once I finish that, I'll then move on to Doctor Who Hunter's Moon by Paul Finch. Book I meant to read in December, but I ran out of time, so I'm going to try and read it this month. Looks to be Doctor Who meets Surviving the Game. And after that, I'll then move on to Vintage Stuff by Tom Sharp, where a teacher goes on a road trip with a student for reasons I can't quite remember, but it's not like that. And it's a farcical hilarity, bunch of silliness. This is a reread. I remember enjoying it the first time round, so looking forward to rereading it because I honestly can't remember anything that happened in it. So those are my main books. I'm also planning on continuing with my wife's Buffy the Vampire Slayer graphic novel collection, which has got plenty of them. I also read to other people in the household. I'm still reading to my youngest the Clash of Sky Galleons, which is a Edge Chronicles by Paul Stewart and Chris Riddle. To my wife, I am reading Revenger by Alistair Reynolds. In fact, I fully expect to finish this in the month of January, and so if I do, or when I do, we'll move on to Shadow Captain, the book 2 of the trilogy. The plan is to go through all 3 books and then move on to something else. So reading that. It's sort of steampunk, Firefly, piracy, Treasure Planet sort of story. Really good. And there we go. That's December and January covered for now. So please, any questions, queries or comments you want to make about anything I've just shown you, then do share them. But as usual, if you have nothing nice to say, then please keep it to yourself. Thank you, and until next time, see you later.